you're really developing not just a sort of multi-year content plan, but like site architecture for like how this thing is going to be built, what subfolders are we going to have, what categories are we going to have, what like highest level, most competitive keywords are we going to target, and how are we going to support those with additional pieces of content. So I think it's just real for me. It's kind of like a big puzzle to assemble.
Welcome to the YI Social Podcast, the show that brings you conversations with folks who get social media. This podcast is sponsored by the National Institute for Social Media. Now, here's your host, Chris Barrows.
And welcome to the YI Social Podcast. I'm excited to be here where I bring you candid conversations with social media professionals from average Joe to CEO. Today, I am going behind the handle with Derek Hales, NapLab.com founder and editor-in-chief. Derek, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Excited to have you. Got a great introduction to you over email, so I do appreciate that. I do appreciate when people share great and interesting people from the space. It is a way that I do get guests on the show, so thank you for that. As I always say, not those self-submissions. I want to hear about people you think are great. So Derek, I've heard some great things about what you've been doing, and it was really interesting when I went back into the past and where you started. And one of the things that stood out to me before you got to where you are today as founder and editor-in-chief is you were in the SEO and social strategy and content marketing space. Can you talk to me a little bit about your journey and why content marketing and SEO and all that was at the beginning of that career from what I've seen thus far?
Yeah. So, I mean, even in the earliest days, I was just a teenager in high school. I started kind of building my own websites, and, it didn't take very long for me to realize that, oh, hey, we can do this with title tags and heading tags and content and keywords, and start getting a pretty, substantial amount of traffic from Google. And so, I didn't even really know it was called sort of SEO then. It was just sort of, the things you did to help, rank in Google as a kid in high school. But even then I was kind of cutting my teeth and, building websites around things that I thought were fun or interesting, but especially, video game type websites. And did that through college, did a little bit of, consulting, helping other people build websites and do some basic optimization. And then as I was getting ready to graduate, I was kind of deciding, okay, well, what am I going to do? Really had no idea it was even like a career, and sort of stumbled upon it my senior year. There's sort of agencies and companies that do nothing but SEO. And I was able to join up with a well-respected agency at the time, and did 4 years of sort of SEO strategy, working on Fortune 100 type clients and brands, and some of the biggest brands in the world, helping them to improve their strategy and SEO and rankings and keywords and traffic and all that stuff. So was able to learn a ton during kind of the 4 years sort of immediately post college before I ventured out into my own projects.
And that's obviously a great base before you get into your own projects. What was the most important thing, or maybe things that you learned from working in an agency environment, working with those different clients? Because obviously when you're doing your own thing and you're bringing people in, or maybe early on it's just you and a few other people, right? Because you got to start somewhere. I have to imagine there are some takeaways from working with those larger clients, some things that you learned that you now utilize today as you build your own business.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing that stuck with me over the years has just been sort of, professional communication. I came out of, just like a kid in college with zero experience, and then immediately being tossed into, presenting to huge marketing teams and C-level teams, and sort of the biggest brands in the world. And there's just a certain level of sort of, professionalism and communication that's required to deliver those pitch decks and to, organize with those clients sort of, long term. And so being able to, kind of know nothing on day one to having 4 years of working with those types of clients taught me a lot just about, sort of working at that level. And so I think that was the thing that's really stuck with me over the years.
Definitely. And I will say that communication seems to still be one of those things that a lot of people have weakness with, or they're always building, even if they're strong, right? And we can always get better at that. I feel like I'm intrigued from the perspective, though, you go from this role to doing your own thing, right? And you go and you get out there. First question that comes to mind for me is heavy focus on the concept here of sleep, right? And it's not just mattresses as I'm looking at this, but it's really the idea of understanding what sleep is about. Why is sleep important? What kind of things are stopping us from sleeping well? Where did that interest come from? Because it's a real big theme pretty early on when you start to look at your resume.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it was just a personal problem. In 2014, my wife and I got married. We needed a new bed, so we did kind of the whole in-store shopping experience, and we found beds that we liked, but the experience of dealing with a salesman and then being presented with prices that were as much as my car and more in many cases, it was just ridiculous. And so we couldn't pull the trigger on these crazy expensive beds. So we ended up sort of taking a chance. We bought a bed online. It was okay. Returned it. Bought another one. It was a little bit better. We kept that, and so I was able to sort of review and compare these things, and sort of start sort of the earliest website where we were testing and reviewing mattresses, and it struck a chord. Straight away we're getting a lot of traffic who were interested. They wanted us to test and review more things, so that's what we did. And sort of in the beginning it was just mattress reviews and mattress comparisons, very sort of nuts and bolts, sort of simple straightforward reviews. And over time we've just tried to create the resources that our audience was looking for, and the questions they were asking, to just provide the information that would help them make more informed decisions, better decisions, and ultimately get the mattresses and sleep related stuff that's going to help them get better sleep at night.
So it was a very organic process. You went out there, you created content. I have to imagine you were using the skills that you developed. So you were getting the content out there, obviously knowing how to market it appropriately. Uh, did you anticipate, was this ever though, at what point does it click in your head? Hey, this is more than reviews. What's that moment for you, that aha moment, as they sometimes say, when you said, this is more, I want to do something bigger with this?
I think pretty quickly, within the first year, certainly, it was just the influx of questions that I was receiving from my audience. They wanted these guides, they wanted these resources beyond just reviews, and it just made sense to, like, all right, well, I don't know everything about this topic, but hey, I can learn, I can research, I can consult with experts that do know more than me, and compile these resources and information and assets into a place that's sort of easy and accessible, and just provide the information kind of all in one place. So pretty quickly, it was apparent that people really wanted that, and I was going to do my best to try to deliver those resources.
As you get into this process, NapLab comes into play, and as the description, and this, I'm told, pulling this verbatim, it's the place where you look when you need to find the best, when you need the best mattress and the best sleep product recommendation. So it's not just about the mattresses, you're also tackling just sleep as a whole. Talk about building this business. Walk me through those beginning steps of what you did to get this going, and then how you mapped out the overall marketing to build out this business. Obviously, over time, it's now, you've been doing this for nearly 5 years, if not longer. So it's not like this has been a uh, by some standards, it's been a long journey, but it's still obviously a fairly young company overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in the beginning, we really wanted to set out to create the most sort of objective and data-driven mattress testing process possible. And so every comparison, every best of list, every educational piece of content can't live without the supporting data. And so until we got the data perfect, nothing else mattered. And so in the earliest days, like, that was the focus. Like, here is how we're going to test, measure, collect data, analyze, so that we can be as consistent and unbiased and fair and objective as possible. And so that was really the especially the first year was just a ton of time going into perfecting that system. And even since then, we've continued to make refinements and improvements. There's been ways where we collect new sources of data, or we analyze existing data in a different way to create scores that are more sort of reflective of performance and more just clear and accurate. And so that was really the first year, but again, beyond refining those systems, and then sort of as we really kind of like targeted the testing process and the data collection process, we started reaching a point where, okay, well, now we have enough data to make a really informed best of list. So I don't think we created our first best of list for maybe like 2 years after launch, because I didn't want to create a best of list that was sort of based on subjectivity or guesstimations. I wanted it to be based on data. So when I say, hey, this is better than this, it's not just my opinion. It is based on the objective data and the tests that we've gathered, and we've tested now hundreds of mattresses, and so we can really say, okay, this is best, this is second best, this is third best. And the comparisons were kind of the same way. You can't really do a comparison unless you've tested enough stuff. And so getting our testing library, our data library, to sort of a critical capacity was essential to really the functioning of NapLab, to make sure that we had enough data to really say these things with enough sort of authority and trust that our audience would believe us.
You just mentioned a really critical word, which is trust, and it's one thing I want to talk about a little bit more heavily today. I think we can dive deeper into that, but let's start with this question: what does it mean as a marketer, as an organization, as a business, to build trust to you? Because it feels like it's not just a word that you just mentioned. It feels like it's a paramount thing. It's a thing that you absolutely needed as you built this business and created opportunities for yourself to be seen and also drive real impact.
Yeah, I think it's twofold, right? What you just said there. It's to be seen and it's to be believed. If we do not have the trust of our audience, we have nothing. And I think there's a real challenge in the world of product reviews on the internet, because there is so much out there that is sponsored, artificial, paid, manipulated, faked, that people are highly skeptical of every review, and they should be. And so we're really starting, behind the eight ball, so to speak, because people don't believe the reviews that they see. And again, for good reason. There's just so much out there that's just really distasteful and unethical and untruthful. And so we have to create systems and processes and data in such a way that when people come and read our reviews, comparison, our best stuff, they can see that, hey, this is not just, one guy, having a go at one mattress, or, oh, he likes this one, that's probably fake or sponsored. No, it is building this massive library built upon sort of repeatable, almost clinical level testing and data collection that then informs our scores and informs our recommendations, and ultimately helps us earn the trust of our audience. I think the second sort of big piece of that is sort of transparency and openness, and both how we operate and test, and how we make money. I think those are sort of the very next questions that people ask, and they want to know sort of what are the financial incentives? Are they getting these things for free? Are they getting paid for this? Is there other are people have some money in this or paying for this? And so we go out of our way to create tons of disclosures explaining exactly who we are, how we operate, who owns us, what we got for free, where our affiliate links, all that stuff, so that it's crystal clear, and that our readers and viewers have all the information so that they can make an informed decision and feel good about us.
Absolutely. And I want to dig deeper into this. Before we do that, I'm going to take a moment to say thank you to an organization that I have trusted and loved for a long time, and that is my sponsor, the National Institute for Social Media, who empowers marketing professionals to elevate their social media expertise through industry-recognized training designed to build confidence, credibility, and credentials while fostering a global community of practice and collaborations among social media professionals. Going to encourage everyone to go learn more about them right now at nismonline.org. So let's go into this a little bit deeper, Derek. You talk a lot about the data, right? And it stood out to me immediately. You talked about, well, we spent a year plus really refining this data. So at the heart of it, when you're citing the data, you're already working on building that trust, it sounds like, because the data has to be accurate to the level. It's actually, I'm actually incredibly impressed by the fact that this is the level of the kind of stuff I've seen in pharmaceutical industries specifically. And those are, being looked at by the FDA, right? So It sounds like you're at a pretty intense level of holding yourself accountable for the information that you're putting out.
Absolutely. I mean, we are accountable. We're accountable to our audience and the people that buy mattresses based on what we recommend. We want people to see our reviews, help them make a choice, get something that works for them, and then have, great sleep for years to come. And if we are, failing, if our data is insufficient or it's inaccurate, or it leads to a recommendation that ends up being, not exactly what a particular reader needed, then we failed, and we need to go back to the drawing board and then try to understand, okay, well, why did that happen? Let's readdress this. Let's make updates so that we can get, better recommendations. And so I'm always, really in tune with what our readers and our viewers are saying. So I am always in the comments. People send me, questions and follow up and, suggestions. And of course, they tell me, when mattresses are great for them that they bought based on recommendations, and they also tell me when it's not. And I try to ingest all that feedback and document that so that we can then say, okay, well, is this something we need to address? Do we need to make an update? Do we need to do something differently so that we're getting better recommendations?
How do you stay up to date on that social engagement then in the process? Because that is part of the trust, right? That when I know people think of very much engagement when often it gets talked about in marketing, in particular on a lot of marketing podcasts, it's the importance of engagement, right? It's the value that it drives in the algorithm, but the engagement is also driving trust because when we're taking the time to talk to people, they're seeing that we're listening. So how do you manage the time to be able to engage with everyone? Is that you yourself always looking? Do you have other ones doing it? What's the kind of organizational setup, and how important is it for you yourself? It sounds like pretty important to be looking at that engagement on some sort of individual basis as well.
Yeah, when it comes to sort of social media comments, it's still mostly just me. I think this last week was the first time it has not been me ever. I went on a week long vacation, and so I had my sister answer the questions for that week. But all other times, it's me. I'm in there, I'm reading, I'm responding, and trying to ingest all the information. If you're sending us feedback via email, it's going to be most likely one of my supporting team members, but sometimes it's me, and then they sort of collect and document that information, and once we kind of have enough of it, they sort of send it all over so that we can say, okay, hey, well, there's a problem here, we need to look at this thing, or make an update there. And so if it's social comments, it's still going to be me, because I think that's just really important to sort of have sort of a finger right on the button, because that's our audience, our viewers, our readers, right there at ground zero. And I want them to feel like we're there to help, and that they're not just sort of being placated by an AA bot or something like that. But it's really me there.
Yeah, and I'm intrigued on the other side of the trust factor is that customer service aspect, right? Which you address through engagement. But talk me through that email side. What kind of expectations do you set for yourself in terms of what needs to be replied to, say, versus what is just, okay, I took in this feedback? Because there's a big difference. You can't necessarily get to everyone and everything, but some emails obviously have to take some priority. So how do you balance the need and understanding of what requires that strong customer experience back to them through a reply or whatever else it may be?
Maybe we shouldn't be doing, because maybe it's not the best use of our time, but we do reply to essentially every email. If somebody sends us a comment on our contact form or to our contact email address, we're going to review and we're going to reply. Now, sometimes that feedback comes in, and there's just we appreciate it, we understand their perspective, but it's not something that we're going to do or change. But sometimes it comes in and say, okay, hey, this is a problem. We need to address this. But in the vast majority of cases, if somebody contacts us, we will send a reply back.
I'm sure everyone appreciates that. The one thing I would love to ask you is, when you started all this and you built up what you now have, how did you set out kind of the expectations for what you look at, for maybe those first 5 years? And then what are you hoping for from a growth perspective over the course of the next five? When you look that out and you've got it mapped out, what are your big goals for the company?
Yeah, so I mean, we've grown tremendously in the first 5 years, much faster than I sort of expected. We went from nothing to for the most part, ranking kind of number one for everything that we kind of hope to rank for, which is really the barometer I set for myself. I'm an SEO guy, I'm an organic search guy, and so I want to be able to be number one when someone types in, name of mattress review or X versus Y comparison or best mattress. So those were sort of the goals that we had, and for the most part, we've ranked well for all of those. Looking into the future, certainly we want to continue to maintain those rankings, and I think we do so by continuing to and continuously improve. And so we're going to look for, bigger and better reviews where we're adding additional testing where possible. This year we added durability testing. We also added objective material testing with a densimeter for foam density testing and a digital caliper for coil thickness, coil gauge testing. And so those have been really interesting and informative, additions to our process. And we'll continue to look for additional testing like that. And then I think kind of beyond that, I think expanding beyond just organic search, which we've been doing kind of this whole time, but to a lesser degree. So, but we're spending more time on sort of what can we do on YouTube, what can we do with social media, trying to really, push these platforms as hard as we can and create content that is accessible and entertaining and interesting and all the things that the video and social platforms require.
Absolutely. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I want to dig into we'll give you a chance to also let everyone know where you're at the end of this. Before we do that, I want to talk about some of our favorite things, and that means it's time for 5 favorites. To kick it off, Derek, I always ask everyone what their favorite social network is.
YouTube Shorts. If we count that as a social network, maybe not.
It's YouTube. Yeah, I think it's fair. YouTube, I mean, and you think about the consumption of that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's massive. It's massive. I had to block it on my own child's phone at one point because it's just too easily.
Oh yeah, no, I can't have it on my phone. I have almost no social media on the phone because otherwise it's just too addictive, especially for me. So I try to keep it limited to kind of work hours.
I appreciate that. It's harder than it seems. I know.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate it, especially living it every day. Well, let's talk through a few other fun things here. I'd love to know though, what's your favorite part of testing a mattress? That maybe people might not even be aware of, things that you wouldn't even think about when you're getting a new mattress that you're going to sleep on every single night. What's something that maybe stands out for you there?
My favorite part, it's a bit of a weird one maybe, but it's cutting the mattress open to reveal what's inside. Every mattress comes, it looks like this pristine rectangle and it's all beautiful. And then we cut it open and we pull away the sort of, shiny veneer to reveal what's really inside, what that mattress is actually made from. And, I'd say 9 out of 10 times, just one look, one, swipe of my hand across those foams, and I have a very good idea of how this mattress is going to perform. We can see so much by the quality of the materials, by the build quality, how they're cut, how they're glued, how they're assembled, how they're sewn. Adding this new layer in 2026 where we're doing foam density testing has also been really interesting. Denser foams tend to last longer, they're more durable, they perform better. And so we see, mattresses that, tout themselves as these miracle products. And then we go and we see the objective data of, what's actually in this thing, how high quality or lack thereof the foams actually are. And it's just really interesting to see sort of just the rawness of the mattress exposed in a way that brands usually don't want that exposed. But I think it's in the best interest of consumers to see exactly what's in the bed. Is it a quality material or maybe it's not?
That is fascinating because I would have never thought about like the testing process of a mattress outside of laying out, because you go to a mattress store, you lay on the mattress, say, oh, how does it feel? Right.
Yeah.
But again, opening my mind here. You obviously, as you noted, spent some time doing SEO strategy, social, etc. What is your favorite part when you are working on, say, website or marketing campaigns, right? And I know you talked organic specifically, and which I think is fantastic. I think organic can do a lot. But what is your favorite part about that process of crafting a campaign or crafting a story for maybe a review?
The initial sort of content strategy plan has always been one of my favorites, because it's a time in which there is no foundation. We get to build the foundation and determine like years of content into the future. And so I think that's a really fun time. It's something that, you kind of like build once and then, at least in my experience, they kind of like refine and add. But the initial build is really interesting because you're really developing not just a sort of multi-year content plan, but like site architecture for like how this thing is going to be built, what subfolders are we going to have, what categories are we going to have, what like highest level, most competitive keywords are we going to target, and how are we going to support those with additional pieces of content. So I think it's just real for me. It's kind of like a big puzzle to assemble. You have sort of, these ideas of, all right, well, we want to be known for this. I want to do this. Well, how are we going to do that? All right, well, we're going to create these 1,000 pieces of content, and here's how we're going to structure them and link them. And here's how we're going to, build this brand over the next 5 years.
Absolutely. And last, before I go into second to last question, I should say, I noticed you've spent a significant amount of your time in Arizona specifically. Wondering what your favorite part has been about being part of that state. It's always really interesting to hear about people's experiences within the individual states where they may have spent a significant amount of time. Is there anything that stands out about the state and the areas you've lived that just make it a great place to live?
The biggest thing for me is no winter. Yes, it is brutally hot for about 4 months, but the other 8 months of the year are just absolutely gorgeous. There effectively is no winter. That kind of like the coldest it gets is 50s for the most part. And so not having to deal with winter is the best. I lived in Kansas for 12 years prior to this, who has brutal winters, and I did not enjoy it. So I have greatly enjoyed the weather sort of a pattern of Arizona more than perhaps anything else.
And the last question that I always ask here on Five Favorites is if you have a favorite television show, or, because you got the option, or movie.
Favorite movie, Lord of the Rings.
Oh, we share that one then.
Yeah.
That's mine. I love me some extended edition, to be very specific.
Only edition.
Yes, that is the only version to watch. So
yeah,
we agree on that. I've got that obsession. It's fair to say. We will not make a podcast about that, folks, if we start talking about Lord of the Rings. Knowing what happens when a Lord of the Rings fan talks to a Lord of the Rings fan, it can go for hours. So we won't go there. An important question for you, Derek, because I got to ask everyone on the show. When you break it down, this is why I social. Why do you social?
I social because it's one more leg that sort of lets me do what I want to do, which is I want to be able to run my own show. I want to be able to work with people that I like and love. I work with family and friends. I want to be able to have the freedom to kind of have my own business. And even though it can be a lot of hours at times, it's rewarding in its own ways. And I think lastly, it's, the thing that, again, helps support, delivering what I want to do, which is to add something meaningful with my life. After 4 years working as sort of corporate SEO, doing big brand SEO for banks and financial institutions and some less ethical brands and products, what I'm doing now, I feel like is adding something positive to the world. I help people improve their sleep and find mattresses and spend less money and just make better and more informed decisions. So it just helps me sleep a little better at night, and then looking years or decades in the future, I'm going to be happy with what I've put out with my time here.
Well, let's make sure that people have a chance to find you. Can you share everybody where they can learn more about you, as well as NapLab, and go check out a little bit more about all the good work you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find kind of everything that we do and who I am over at naplab.com. That's NAPLAB.com. We have our reviews, comparisons, best of guides, educational materials, and a whole lot more. If you are in the market for a mattress, we also have our Mattress Finder quiz. Answer a few questions about your needs, preferences, and budget. That goes straight to me or a member of my team, and we send you back a personalized recommendation within 24 hours.
Absolutely fantastic. I'll probably have to do that at some point in the future. God knows how old my mattress is. It's old. That's all I know. But with that note, I got to thank you, Derek, for joining me here today. Really appreciate your time. I learned a lot. Like I said, I never thought about what's on the inside of the mattress as much until you talked about cutting one open. So that's going to resonate with me for a long time. For those of you who are listening, I want to thank you for listening to the Why Social podcast. We've got some great conversations on the way, but I also encourage you to go back and take a listen to all the other conversations we've had. We are actually approaching, and I don't have the exact number, but what will be between the two different iterations of Why Social that existed. There's that 5-year gap that exists. We're going to be approaching what will end up being 200 episodes of this show. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'll get the actual math on that for you all, but thank you for being a part of it. Please also go check out the National Institute for Social Media and consider them as part of your certification options. They're a wonderful place to work with. And I am a nationally certified social media strategist through them, and I'm very proud of that. On that note, I'm going to thank Derek for being here. Please go check out naplab.com. This has been the Why I Social podcast.